Hello, guys. Welcome to a live Deprogram with Keri Smith. Today is Friday, July 26th. I hope you're having a great, almost the weekend. I'm glad you're here. If you're new, this is a live show we do Mondays and Fridays where we talk about my old religion, my old ideology, social justice or woke ideology, which is the dominant cultural religion in the West at the moment. And we try and help people who are in it or who maybe have accepted some of its premises to understand what it really is and that it's not liberalism. It's actually very illiberal. And then sometimes I get into specific topics. Today, I'm going to be talking about a political topic. We don't always cover politics, but I have a feeling in the next few months leading up to the election, I'm going to be covering politics a bit more than usual. I also may start streaming. I'm not sure yet, but for the regulars, if you're interested, let me know in the chat what you think about it. But I'm thinking of doing some short streams during the week as well, because there are so many things developing. And I think it might be nice to do some short focus streams that just sort of debunk some of the stuff that the propaganda media is putting out there. I don't know if you've noticed, but recently they've all been scrubbing 3-year-old articles. Axios and others have been scrubbing their articles and editing them 3 years later because they're trying to distance Kamala Harris from her job of being in charge of the border. They want to distance her from the disaster at the border. And they're putting out things saying that it's false, that you should not call her the border czar. And some of these publications called her that 3 years ago. They called her that. They referred to her that way. And they're going in and deleting these things and editing them, editing 3-year-old articles. It's incredible to watch this unfold right in front of our eyes. I made a joke about George Orwell's 1984. I said, paging Winston Smith. This was his job in 1984. Winston Smith was editing history. He was editing news articles from the past, and he was creating fake news articles from the past to edit history, to change history, and to deceive the public. That was what he was responsible for. We're watching a bunch of Winston Smiths right now trying to change history, trying to change what's true right in front of our eyes. And so I've been trying to keep up with all the craziness, and there's new stuff every day. So I think I might start doing a few streams during the week if our house renovation schedule will allow me to. We're in the middle of staining the deck and power washing the whole house so that we can repaint. My husband and I are doing the painting job ourselves. It's a 2-story house. It's a bit of a job, and so yeah, it was raining a bit this morning, so I was like, oh yeah, I don't have to do it this morning. Can wait until it stops raining. So welcome. We're going to be talking about politics today. We're talking specifically about JD Vance. JD Vance is the vice presidential candidate on the Republican ticket. A lot of people know him from, he sort of has a similar trajectory, I think, in some ways to me and maybe to a lot of you guys, in that he sort of had his waking up moment and left the left. And at first, he put out this book, Hillbilly Elegy, that I haven't read yet. I do own it. I picked it up a few years ago. I haven't read it. Maybe we'll make it a book club selection since it's very relevant to what's happening right now. And I know a lot of people are interested in it. I'd like to read it. It might be fun to read it with you guys. So he wrote this book, Hillbilly Elegy, and it was a memoir, and it was also, it was hailed by the left at the time because he was sort of explaining, here's what's happened here's how we've disenfranchised working class people, and specifically white male working class people. And the left was sort of praising it. Like, this is eye-opening. They said this was a book that helped them to understand a lot. And then after the book came out, there was a movie made. Hollywood liked it. Glenn Close is in the movie, Amy Adams. I haven't seen the movie, but maybe we should read the book and then check out the film also. But then he got involved in politics, and I've seen him move like a lot of us who left the left. It's a slow progression as you start to shed more of the false premises from that belief system. And so he's definitely what you would call based now. He's definitely reality based. And he says what he believes, I think anyway. He's saying what he believes to be true. And I have some issues with some of his stances on things. Of course I do. You should always have, you shouldn't agree with any person on every single thing they say or believe. That would be weird. But when you're in a cult like the left, you pick these heroes and you're like, everything they say, I'm on board. I don't agree with every single thing he says, but one of the things he said that's getting a lot of airtime, and I didn't think it was a big deal, but it's not controversial in my opinion, but it apparently is, and the left has made a lot of hay with it. One of the things he said is he was talking about the importance of families to society, and he was questioning whether it's a good idea to have so many people in politics and journalism who do not have families, who do not have an investment, like a physical investment in the future. And that got picked up. A very short clip out of context got picked up. But even with that out of context clip, before I went and found the context, I still thought this is not controversial. I understood what he was saying. Well, they've made a lot of hay with it, specifically with his line about childless cat ladies. You can't even make a tongue-in-cheek joke anymore. People get so offended. And so it's such a big news story now. The propaganda media has made it such a big news story. Oh my goodness. That you've got celebrities like Jennifer Aniston coming out and commenting without realizing she doesn't even understand what he was saying. You've got people like Meghan McCain commenting and without understanding what he was saying, without having watched the full context. And so we're going to just look at it today. We're going to try and show here. Look, here's what he said. Now make up your mind about it. Now, if you still think what he said is terrible, fine, but at least know what he said. Don't go based on what the media is telling you said, what the corporate media is telling you that he said. Michael Colliard, thanks for the super chat for $9.99. Thanks for supporting Deprogrammed. It says, I gotta fly. I'll catch this later. I still owed for pop culture with MC. Y'all have a great stream. Aw, thank you so much. If you wanna support Deprogrammed, you can do so here at YouTube. You can become a member. You can leave a super chat. You can also support us at Subscribestar or Locals or Patreon, and I greatly appreciate it. Okay, so let's just start with the out of context little snippet that people put out on Twitter and the corporate media picked up and ran with. Let's start with that. So this is a clip from Tucker Carlson. Now, he appeared on Tucker Carlson, and this was a couple years ago, 2 years ago. And this was after his much longer speech that we're also going to watch a bit from, where he had talked about the importance of families. We had talked about, so childless cat ladies, and he was getting a lot of flack for it at the time. And so Tucker brought him on to talk about it. Now, and this is the clip that everyone's very upset about. Let's just see what you think of this one. You guys see that?
He means it. Well, the latest example came on Friday in Alexandria. JD Vance made a pretty obvious point. He said the childless left, that's how he put it, lacks, quote, physical commitment to the future of this country. Quote, why is this just a normal fact of life for the leaders of our country to be people who don't have a personal and direct stake in it via their own offspring? That's what he asked, and they went completely bananas. So we thought it'd be interesting to talk to JD Vance about what he meant and what it's like to be attacked for saying things that are so obviously true. He joins us tonight. JD Vance, thanks so much for coming on. So tell us that was just a very short snippet of a much longer speech, and a really interesting speech that people, I think, should read. But what were you saying?
Thanks, Tucker. And by the way, if folks want to help us out, jdvance.com. Every little bit helps if you can throw us a couple bucks. But look, what I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it? I just wanted to ask that question and propose that maybe if we want a healthy ruling class in this country, we should invest more, we should vote more, we should support more people who actually have kids, because those are the people who ultimately have a more direct stake in the future of this country.
Man, if you had called for, I don't know, lowering tax rates to 0 or invading Canada or, I don't really know what, making the death penalty mandatory for people who don't get the vaccine, something really radical, they wouldn't even have noticed. The Atlantic would have just nodded. But saying something like that drove them like insane. Why?
Well, I think first is because it actually hit a nerve. I mean, these people recognize that they're unhappy. They live in one-bedroom apartments in New York City. They've played their entire lives to win a status game. They're obsessed with their jobs. They're obsessed with their wealth and with their fortunes. And they look at middle America, people who are actually pretty happy with their lives and the choices that they've made. And they hate normal Americans for choosing family over these ridiculous DC and New York status games. And I think because of that, they just get so angry when somebody calls it what it is. It's acceptable if they ignore that it never happens. But when somebody calls out that, look, if you're a miserable cat lady, you should not force your misery on the rest of the country, they just get really upset about it. And I think, by the way, Tucker, it's a good thing that they get upset about it. It suggests that they know that we're hitting a nerve, not just in this campaign, but with this message that we should invest in American families in this country. Nothing else. We should be about healthy, stable families.
Do you think that this would be a happier country if it were run by happier people?
I definitely do. It makes total sense, right? Happier people would make for a happier country. And it's not just the leaders of the left, of course. It's not just the Democrat politicians. No. You know this, Tucker. The most miserable people in the mainstream media are these mediocre journalists who have their entire sense of self-worth wrapped up in their crappy jobs instead of in their families. People who know where they came from, people who go home at night and see the face of a smiling kid, whatever their profession, I think they're happier, I think they're healthier, and they're going to be better prepared to actually lead this country. And the problem that I have, especially as we're entering this period of COVID obsession again, is that we have so many people proposing we mask our children again. Look, the people who are proposing it, they don't have to go home to a child at the end of the day. If they did, I don't think they'd be proposing all these ridiculous restrictions again.
Yeah, they're imposing their psychodramas and their neuroses on the rest of us. And we should say, no thanks. We're going to be happy. They hate you when you say that. JD Vance, great to see you tonight. Thank you. Hey, Sean Hannity here.
Okay, so that was actually a longer portion of the clip that got shared. I shared everything he said about it there on Tucker. And again, this appearance was after he had given a speech that Tucker mentioned. And the speech, of course, a TV appearance is not like a speech. A TV appearance, you maybe have 2 or 3 minutes. You're getting the bullet points in there. You're responding to whatever questions they're asking you. You don't have room to stretch out and make sure you give your caveats and explain for the people who you know are going to mishear you. And so we're going to look at the speech too, because he gave some caveats in that speech. A couple things. When I saw this, without having seen the speech where he addressed this, I just saw this clip. Now, I'm a childless woman. I didn't get offended. I know he's not talking about me. I kind of think this is one of those things where the hit dog hollers the most. If you think he's talking about you, well, he probably is. He might be. If you don't, like he said, people were getting upset about it because it struck a nerve. And the basis of what he's saying, though, is it's not controversial. He's saying that families are the basic building block of society. If you have a healthy family, if you have lots of healthy families, you're going to have a healthy society. This is where you are bringing up the next generation. You're investing in actual literal people. It's the most important job you could ever have, is to raise a healthy child, to be a good parent. And he's saying that people who are parents have a different kind of stake in the future than those who are not. They have a physical stake in the future. We're all going to pass away. We're not taking any of this with us. But if you have children out there who are going to survive you and continue to be in this world, you have a greater physical stake in how this world turns out and how society turns out. You care more. You care in a different way. How about phrasing it that way? You care in a different way. Your children are still here after you're gone. You don't want to leave them a society that's in shambles. You have a physical stake in the future. That's obvious. That's true. Now, here's all the things people heard that they thought they heard that are ridiculous. Does that mean if I don't have kids that I don't care about the future? No. No, that's not what that means. I care about the future. I assume you do too. But do you have that physical stake in that extra incentive to make sure it's a very good society when you're gone? You don't. And what he's saying is, at some point, we got to a place where we started electing people to set a vision for the future of our country and for the future of society who don't have that physical stake in the future themselves. And he also gave an example of how it might affect them. You might be making policy that affects children and families when you don't have a family and you don't have children. And you're not going to think about it in the same way. Possibly. He's saying it would be harder for you to make proposals that are anti-family if you actually have one. It doesn't mean you can't do that. There are all kinds of evil people. There are evil people who are parents. We know this. A lot of them are pushing their kids into gender mutilation and sterilization. There are abusive parents, of course. We're speaking in generalities. This is a generality. But so this was blown up this week. This became huge. And so we started seeing stuff like this from Meghan McCain. Meghan McCain is an odd bird. I've never done a deep dive on her. I just see her tweets now and then. I don't watch The View or whatever. I don't know if she's still on there, but she seems to be a handmaiden for the Democrats who says she's a Republican. Is this true? Can you confirm this for me? This is just my take on her, having not paid very much attention to her, but whenever I see something, it's like, wow, she's always always carrying water for Democrats, or she's always attacking Republicans, but she says she's a Republican. It's kind of strange. Okay, Meghan McCain. She starts saying, one of my best friends did rounds and rounds of unsuccessful IVF, in vitro fertilization, wanting to have a child. It is still painful to talk about. This childless woman comment by JD Vance has made so many waves with so many different friends of mine for its insensitivity and cruelty to women. He's not talking about women who want to be mothers, who want a family. He's not talking about women who are trying to have a family, who are aiming for that. Do you know how I know this? Because I watched the speech where he had time to stretch out and make that caveat. But I didn't even have to watch the speech because, like I said, when I first saw this clip, I knew immediately what he's talking about. He's talking about people who are family focused, potentially having a greater investment in the future, or wanting to have a greater investment in the future of society, trying to have that kind of investment in the future of society. He's not talking about women who want to have kids and are trying desperately. That's not what he's talking about. Someone else who got upset and clearly did not understand him or doesn't want to understand him, and definitely hasn't watched the speech that he was referring to here in this media clip, was Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer Aniston's, here's a headline from NBC News. Jennifer Aniston slams JD Vance over childless cat lady's comment from resurfaced interview. Quote, I truly can't believe this is coming from a potential VP, Aniston said about a 2021 interview in which Vance said the U.S. was run by, quote, a bunch of childless cat ladies. And so here you can tell she hasn't even taken the time to try and understand him. She obviously hasn't seen the speech. She says, quote, well, this is where's her quote here? She says, oh, so she's talking about her struggle with IVF and her struggle with infertility. So she says, quote, all I can say is, Mr. Vance, I pray that your daughter is fortunate enough to bear children of her own one day, Aniston wrote. I hope she will not need to turn to IVF as a second option because you are trying to take that away from her too. The actor told Allure in 2022 that she tried to get pregnant for many years, but, quote, it was a challenging road for her. I was going through IVF, drinking Chinese teas, you name it, she said. I was throwing everything at it. I would have given anything if someone had said to me, freeze your eggs, like earlier in life, right? Freeze your eggs, do yourself a favor. You just don't think about it. So here I am today. The ship has sailed. Now, it's not just about freezing your eggs. Yes, maybe somebody should have said that to you when you were younger, but you know what else they should have probably said to you when you were younger and said to me when I was younger? Don't delay becoming a mother. You don't need to freeze your eggs if you don't delay becoming a mother. Again, in generalities, I can already hear the woke person saying, what about women who still can't get back? Hey, we're talking about in general. The reason Jennifer Aniston can't conceive is because of she waited too late. And no, she didn't freeze her eggs either, but she waited too late. I'm struggling with some of these same things right now. So I don't understand why someone like Jennifer Aniston is not on the same page as JD Vance. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm on the same page as him. Families are important. Getting the message out to young people that, hey, everything the world is telling women, young women, about how you can have it all, family and career and, a brand or whatever, like, and that you can do everything and be great at all of it. That's not true. You can have a career and kids, but it's going to be a crazy juggling act to make the kids a priority with that career. You're going to have to sacrifice some things and you have to choose which area of life and what sacrifices you can make. One of the biggest lies young women are being told, and my generation, we were told this too, but now it's just ramped up. They get this message younger and younger today. One of the biggest lies we were told as women is that, you can dilly-dally in your 20s and 30s and always put off having kids till later. Put it off, put it off. That's not true. And so I think what Jennifer Aniston could be doing is saying some of the same things JD Vance is saying about the importance of families to society, to our personal growth, to being healthier people, because I do think there's something that you learn as a parent that I haven't learned yet. I'm responsible for myself, my husband, my little dog, who I adore. But I haven't had that experience of being responsible for a child and everything that you learn with that, and how it obviously necessarily, for a healthy person, conquers some of the narcissism that humans struggle with. How it's an opportunity, let's say, for people to learn to make themselves maybe not the center of the world. So I would think Jennifer Aniston would agree with him about the importance of family. If she's trying to have children, then she thinks it's important. I want you to hear in his own words what JD Vance is talking about. Now, this is the speech that they referred to in the Tucker Carlson clip. And this is where he had a lot more time to stretch out, to make his points, to give the caveats about IVF, about women who were dealing with infertility. He makes those points here. So Meghan McCain and Jennifer Aniston and all these people who are just seeing the out of context Tucker Carlson clip, and they're like, what about women who are trying to have kids but are infertile? It's like, yeah, he's on the same page with you. He's on the same page with you. He actually said, that's not who I'm talking about. He said that. Let's watch him. This was a speech that he gave 2 years ago. Obviously, it happened before the Tucker Carlson interview because Tucker was asking him about it. It's a speech he gave on our civilizational crisis. And he gave this speech at the Intercollegiate, I can never say that word, Studies Institute. Intercollegiate. That's one of my trouble words. Okay. Now, we're not going to play the whole thing. I've queued it up to this topic.
These things that we could talk about to minimize the control of the most pernicious institutions in our society. But the thing that I want to talk about, the institution I want to take aim at today for the remainder of my remarks, is I want to take aim at the left, specifically the childless left, because I think the rejection of the American family is perhaps the most pernicious and most evil thing that the left has done in this country. Now, let me ask you a question. I'm gonna get in trouble for this. This isn't being recorded, is it? Broadcast live? That's okay.
That's a joke,
That's
leftist. He knows
I'm gonna get in
it's
trouble
recorded.
for this, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. Separate Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Joe Biden, the three elder Democrat politicians who have run for president before, except for Biden, may not run for president again. Consider all of the next gen of the Democrat Party. If you go on any of these prediction markets, they'll tell you who's most likely to win the Democrat nomination for president in 2024, 2028. Think about all those people. The names are obvious. They're well-known people. Kamala Harris, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who's now the Secretary of Transportation, Cory Booker, AOC. Think all these people. They're different. They come from different walks of life, different parts of the country. What is the one thing that unites every single one of them? Not a single one of them has any children. And why is that? Why?
It's pretty incredible when you think about it. If you're on the left and you're watching, I'm just asking you, like, isn't that odd? Was that the case generations ago that there are so many childless people? In general, there's a lot more childless people, but childless people in leadership, like leading the future of the country, but they don't even know what it's like or have the experience, some of them, to lead a family. It's a little bit weird. It doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to hold office. Again, with the caveats, it's like I can hear you people are, does that mean childless people shouldn't be able to? No, of course you should be able to run for office. Of course, nobody's saying what you can and can't do. We're saying, isn't it weird? Is it a bad sign that our society has reached a point where there are so many people in leadership roles who've never had that experience of having children? And yes, I know Kamala Harris is a stepmom. So I don't, you could quibble about whether or not he should have included her in this list or not, because she is parenting. But she never had that experience of having her own kids, giving birth. She never had that experience. You could quibble about whether that's necessary or not. I don't really care about that. His point overall about people who don't have experience raising families, thinking they know best how to raise a country full of families, it's a little odd.
Why have we let the Democrat Party become controlled by people who don't have children. And why is this just a normal fact of American life? That the leaders of our country should be people who don't have a personal and direct stake in it via their own offspring, via their own children and grandchildren. Now, let me do the necessary throat clearing because I do think it's important. Look, a lot of people are unable to have kids for very complicated and important reasons. I know, good friends of mine who have struggled to find the right girl, find the right guy. There are people, of course, for biological reasons, medical reasons, that can't have children. The target of these remarks is not them. It's important to point that out. There have always been people like that who, even though they would like to have kids, unable to have them. Let's set them to the side.
Okay, he was very clear. There's your soundbite, Jennifer Aniston, Meghan McCain. He did say, let's set them aside. I'm not talking about people who want to have kids and have not yet been able to for whatever reason. I'm not talking about people who want to have families. Those are family-minded people. That's not who I'm talking about, family-minded people. Clearly.
It is one thing to recognize that there are people who don't have children. It's one thing to recognize that there are people who don't have children through no fault or choice of their own. But it's something else to build a political movement invested theoretically in the future of this country when not a single one of them actually has any physical commitment to the future of this country.
That's his driving home point. It's one thing to not have kids. It's one thing to want to have kids and be trying to have kids. But it's another thing to, and this is what he's talking about, to build a political movement or a culture that's centered around childlessness. Because you're making something else the center of your world and your life if it's not family. And he goes on to illustrate that. And he talked about some of it in the Tucker clip. But a lot of these people, these high profile people in powerful positions in the media, in politics, who are childless, the people, think of Chelsea Handler. That's a poster woman for what he's talking about. She posts constantly about how she doesn't have kids. She hates kids. She loves her childless life. It's so cool. What was that picture she posted of herself skiing and drinking vodka? She's like, I just drink vodka and ski all the time and have the best life and spend money. There's a whole movement now culturally of these young, childless people who call themselves dinks, double income, no kids. And they do a lot of selling on Twitter. It's almost like they're trying to sell themselves that like they have a better life. Our life is so much better without children. It's just us and doing what we want. Hedonism. Yay. Money, prestige, power. That's their identity. Money, prestige, power, the things they have. That's their identity. There's no family. They're not trying to have a family. That's what he's talking about, this cultural movement. And it's not just on the left. I mean, you can point to examples in the Republican Party as well. I saw Meghan McCain pointed to Lindsey Graham, Miss Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, my home state, was like, why doesn't JD Vance care about Miss Lindsey Graham? And the funniest comment was like that. He did talk about him. That's Lindsey Graham is a childless cat lady. Miss Lindsey Graham. But he's talking about this cultural place we're in now, which is a very weird place. It's a very new place where family is no longer, people have forgotten. I forgot. I only realized this in the past couple years after leaving woke. And it was a slow process for me to learn this. Oh my goodness. Families are the building block of society. Like this used to be common sense and basic knowledge. But if you go out on the street and you ask someone like, what do you think is the building block? Like if you think of society like a house, what's the foundation? What do you have to have at the bottom? Healthy families. Most people aren't going to say that. It's just, we don't think about it. We don't think about important things that much. It is important. Oh, and I saw a great comment from, give it up for Pirate Tomsky, our British mod. He said, not only that, potentially sending other people's kids off to war. Yes, what a great comment, Pirate. This is an example of that might be harder for you to do if you have kids. It might give the situation more gravity for you, personal gravity, a personal stake in these decisions you're making as a politician. It's a great point.
Now, I think, unfortunately, and I'm going to take some pot shots at people who have been taking pot shots at me the last couple of weeks. It's honestly true of a lot of folks in our press and in our media. Very often, I will read a story about me, or someone else will pass a story on about me. I can't read all of them because there are a lot of negative stories about JD Vance in the last few weeks. People seem to not like me in the liberal and the mainstream press. But very often, I'll think a little bit about the people who wrote those stories. And what you find consistently is that many of the most unhappy and most miserable and most angry people in our media are childless adults. Let's just be honest about it. Because look, the elite model, the American dream to the elites is get as much credentials as you can, get as much money as you can, get the most prestigious job, and that's where you're going to find your self-worth. But I got to be honest with you, most of our mainstream reporters are not impressive enough to find a lot of self-meaning in their jobs. They're just not good enough at it. Thank you for clapping at that. But what society has built its entire civilization, the flow of information, the leaders of its country, political and governmental, and also corporate, around completely childless adults. It's never happened. This is a new thing in American life, but I think probably a new thing in world history. It's not good. It's not healthy. You see the obsessive, weird, almost humiliating, aggressive posture of our media, and you wonder, how could these people possibly be so miserable and unhappy? Well, the answer is because they don't have any kids. Kids are the ultimate way that we find healthy people, at least I think, self-meaning in life. Whether you're in children, your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews, I'm going to go back to my two beautiful boys, my wife who loves me, and recognize that the most important thing in my life is going to be them. It will always be them. That recognition makes us healthier people. It makes us more stable people. And we should worry that in America, family formation, our birth rates, a ton of indicators of family health have collapsed.
This part is so important. We're going to continue listening to this. I just wanted to cut in for a second to say, when he's talking about like in a healthy person, having a family is necessarily going to make it harder for you to be completely narcissistic and make it harder. It doesn't mean you can't be. There's some really successful narcissists out there with families who continue to be narcissists. And as Jen Atkins said in the chat, there are some narcissists can't even feel their own kids. It's like their kids are some, part of themselves. They don't, it doesn't work on a person who's got a personality disorder, maybe, let's say it that way. But for the average person, for healthy people, having family, having something more meaningful and purposeful in your life than all the trivial things that we get distracted by is very helpful. And I'm sure anecdotally, you can think of examples like this. This is something I realized after I became a Christian, is one of the values of prayer, I think. And if you're not a Christian, or if you don't believe in a God, maybe you do meditation, or maybe you do a gratitude journal, or something that helps to pull your focus to each day so you don't lose time, and also helps to pull your focus to what's important and let go of the little things. If you don't do that, I would recommend you do it. And if you're not a believer, like I said, you can do a gratitude journal. You can do other types of things if you don't want to try prayer. But what I like about prayer is that at the end of each day, it gives you a chance to take account of what's really important and to say thank you to God. To say thank you. And if you don't believe in God, you could say to the universe, you could just put it out there. But thank you for this. Thank you for my health. Thank you for my home. Thank you for that job opportunity you gave me. Thank you for, my child being healthy and getting, putting people in my life in our community who can help my child, who are good role models and examples. Thank you for my church community. Like there's things every day that come up that are opportunities to express gratitude. And neuroscientists say that when you express gratitude, it reduces negative emotion. Isn't that amazing? When you express gratitude, that's why some people say, keep a gratitude journal, because if you're practicing that every day, you're increasing the positive emotions and you're decreasing the negative ones. And so a lot of times in prayer, just to bring it back to family, it's like you can have something crazy. Maybe some of you have experienced this, and something crazy happened to you during the day, or something that seems like a big deal and it's frustrating, and something doesn't go your way. It's like, this is a nightmare. How are we going to fix this? And you're angry about it, or you're upset about it, or anxious about it, or whatever the thing is. Like, my husband and I ran out of gas the other day on the highway. He may not like that I'm sharing this, but I'll say it's really my fault. I'll take the blame. It was my truck. And yeah, anyway. And it's like, in that moment, you can be tempted to be like, this is the worst thing ever. But the more you practice prayer, you don't have to wait till the end of the day to take stock of things and realize, like, that wasn't that important. That you guys are fine and you're safe and you got home and nothing much worse happened. Nobody hit the vehicle while it was over on the side of the highway. Like, nothing terrible happened. The more you practice prayer, I've noticed over time, you don't have to wait until later to realize, after the emotion is passed or whatever. You don't have to wait until later to see the big picture, because you start seeing it in the moment. You could be in the middle of something like that and have this serene peacefulness of, like, I know this is going to be okay. Dear God, please get us through this. Thanks for watching over us. But this isn't that big of a deal, you know? And that's what he's talking about with family. He may not be talking about God here, but he's talking about with family. He says, at the end of the day, I go home to my kids and my wife. And that pulls his focus back on what's actually meaningful. It's not that fight that you might have had with someone at work. It's not that, crazy thing your boss expected of you, and crazy expectation, or whatever conflict you had during the day. It's not that. What's most important, what's meaningful, what's valuable, if you have a family, it's your family. I would say, as a Christian, it's your relationship with God and your family. But those come before everything else. The career, they certainly come before the career. Okay. Let's continue with this, because this is about to get really good. He's about to give some examples of, see, if you start thinking, leftists, if you start asking yourself questions, it's not bad to ask questions, like a question like, isn't it kind of odd that we have so many people in leadership roles who don't have families? If you start asking questions like that, it can lead you sometimes to ideas that you may not have had otherwise, that could be good ideas. And so if you reach that place like I did, where you start to understand that, oh, healthy families are the building block of a healthy society, then you start to think about laws and policies in a different way, because you start to think, are our policies incentivizing healthy, stable families or not? And then you can look at things like welfare, which I think is actually, it's not incentivizing healthy, stable families. It's doing the opposite. It doesn't matter what our good intentions were with it. Look at the consequences of it. It actually incentivizes being a single parent. We've talked about this on the show before, but there are examples of, I saw an example on Reddit in the past few months of this guy who said he got married. He had kids from a previous marriage. She was a single mom. She had kids from a previous marriage. They got married, and now she's really angry at him because she lost some of her welfare benefits because of the marriage, and she wants to get a divorce so that, It doesn't, and that kind of a system does not create incentives for creating healthy, stable families. It's actually the opposite. It's like, we'll give you more money if you stay single and continue to have children out of wedlock without a father figure around. There have been studies, I've mentioned this one before, but Larry Elder, I remember him talking about this study about, they did surveys where they asked middle and upper class people, do you think that poor people would ever have more kids just to get more money from the government? And most people were like, no, of course not. But then they asked poor people, would you have kids more? Would you have another kid to get more money from the government? And they were like, yeah. Yeah, because there's something really wrong there. If you're in that place where you're like, you think of yourself as livestock almost. You think of yourself as, being taken care of by the government, that you come to rely on and depend on them, and you have no more autonomy, and you're just like, well, I guess I'll have another kid because I'll get more of a pittance from the government. And the government locks people into that mentality, and welfare locks people into that mentality. I know that's not what it's intended for, and I know it can also help pick people up and get them back on their feet, but there's a lot of abuse of that system. And think about the incentive it's creating. It's going the wrong direction. That incentive is bad. So he's about to talk about some positive incentives that maybe you could do in policy or law that would encourage people to have healthy, strong families.
Now, my proposal today, my argument to you, is that whether you agree with my views of political economy, we should treat this as a crisis in this country. The fact that we're not having enough babies, the fact that we're not having enough children is a crisis in this country. It's a crisis because it makes our media more miserable. It's a crisis because it doesn't give our leaders enough of an investment in the future of their country. And it's a crisis because we know that babies are good. Now, I could sit here and tell you all kinds of reasons why they're good. There's a ton of economic evidence that suggests that children make economies more innovative, more productive, more geared towards the future. There's even psychological evidence that suggests that, for example, fathers of young daughters, I don't have a daughter yet, we're working on it. Fathers of young daughters are more compassionate, more understanding, even that they use different words in their vocabulary when they have daughters.
Not amazing?
We are not just worried about the lack of babies because it means our media is miserable and because it means our leaders are miserable. We're worried about babies because babies are good. And a country that has children is a healthy country that's worth living in. We care about children because we're not sociopaths, and we don't want to live in a society of sociopaths.
Yes. Yes.
Now, there are a few ideas, concrete ideas, for how we can make it easier to raise American families and support American children. Viktor Orban, who is, of course, the bugaboo of nearly every liberal in the mainstream American media, has implemented a couple of policies that I think are really interesting. One of which is that in his country, they offer loans to new married couples that are forgiven at some point later if those couples eventually stay together and have children. Why can't we do that here? Why can't we actually promote family formation here in our country? Why can't we give resources to parents who tell us the only reason they're not having kids is because they can't afford it? This is a civilizational crisis. And if we're not willing to spend resources to solve it, we're not serious about the very real problems that we face.
Isn't that a great idea? Now, like other ideas where you have a good intention, maybe it won't turn out the way you want, like welfare. But I think it's a great idea. It's something people should be considering and talking about. There are several countries now that are trying to incentivize healthy, strong marriages and children in those marriages. And at least as a policy proposal, I think that's a good idea because it's incentivizing staying together also. Now, it may have, like any policy, you don't know until you put it out there. Is this going to be the incentive we want, or is it somehow going to go the other way? But I like that idea. They get a loan from the government if they get married and have children, and they don't have to repay the loan if they're still married, and parenting those kids together as a married couple 10 years later or something. That's interesting. That's an interesting idea. That gives you an incentive. That gives people an incentive to push them towards a healthy direction rather than an unhealthy direction, to push them towards stable choices rather than unstable choices. Currently, we have a lot of laws that incentivize being unstable or remaining unstable. That's not good. That's not good for society. So I thought that was a very interesting policy, proposition. Wouldn't it be great if this is what the media was talking about and debating? Wouldn't it be great if the media were actually thoughtful and honest and sincere and in search of truth and interested in ideas? Wouldn't that be great if instead of a bunch of talking heads about like childish cat ladies offended me, the comment offended me, like instead of doing that, what if they had people on to say like, look at this policy idea, how could we incentivize having stable, healthy families? What are the possible pitfalls with this policy, proposition? Like, what if the media functioned like that? But they don't. It's a bunch of propaganda crap. We're not going to get that on the mainstream media ever. That conversation's not going to happen. I'm going to let him finish. I think here.
We should do it. We should give resources to parents who are going to have kids. We should make it easier to raise American families. And we should send the signal to the culture that we are the pro-family party and we're going to back it up with real policy.
Now, he's about to propose something else. I don't know if I want to get into it because I don't agree with the next thing. Well, maybe I'll show you because this is a weird conversation. Like I just said, maybe you should have conversations and debates. He's about to make a proposal I don't agree with. Let's hear this one.
But I worry that the specific policy details, and we can debate these things, we can argue about them, but I hope we all agree that more healthy American families is a good thing. We can debate the specifics of these policies, but I worry actually that there is a structural democratic disadvantage built in to our society right now. I'll be simple and direct about it. Compare, for example, the leaders of the Democrat Party, the people who may very well be the next president of the United States. Compare their investment in this country, compare the fact that they don't have families against a middle-class Ohio family that spends a ton of resources and a ton of time educating their children, teaching them to love their country. When those kids get older, those kids will go off and fight in American wars. And when all of us reach the point that all of us will reach, they will be the ones who take care of us in old age. That's not something you can buy if you don't have people. These children are the future of this country. And yet, the parents who have them actually have no advantage in our democratic process. They have a smaller voice in some ways, in very many cases, than the people who don't have any children at all. The children who come from these families have no real representative in our democracy. Why don't we change that? Now, some people will say this is radical and this is crazy. The Democrats are talking about giving the vote to 16-year-olds, but let's do this instead. Let's give votes to all children in this country, but let's give control over those votes to the parents of those children.
Okay. This one is worth talking about and thinking about. My initial gut instinct on this one is no. I think I could see the potential pitfalls on this one. Even though your intentions might be good, I can see the ways in which this one would be abused a lot more immediately. So tell me what you think in the chat. My immediate thought is, well, just like we have, welfare, which was intended to help people get out of poverty and to get into a stable place, we have that sort of resulting in the opposite happening where people are just staying on welfare and staying in an unstable place, and it incentivizes them to have more kids in an unstable environment like that. I could see this happening with the vote thing too. If you think about it, I see what he's saying there. Like, if you're creating healthy families and, maybe you should have a bigger say in how the country's run. And so you get a vote for each kid that you have. But I could also see that how do you what about the baby daddies who have, 60 kids? Like, do they get 60 votes for being irresponsible and fathering lots of children that they abandoned? Like, how does that work? I guess you'd have to get into the specifics. I guess you'd have to say, and by the way, I think this one is so far out there, I don't think it's actually realistic anyway. So it's kind of a waste of time debating. I mean, it's worth thinking about, but now that he's on the he's the vice presidential candidate on the Republican ticket, I don't think he'll be talking about this poll. I don't think he'll be putting this one forward seriously. Because it's almost like the repeal the 19th movement, those people who say we should get rid of women's right to vote. It's so unrealistic that you're kind of just distracting people from things you could be talking about that you might actually be able to achieve. Oh, hey, Joseph Massey's here. Joseph Massey, brilliant poet. Thank you for the $5 super chat. He says, and now that we've come to the end of our rainbow, there's something I must say out loud. You're once, twice, 3 times a childless cat lady. Joseph, why don't they have a sense of humor? I know why they don't. The ones who are getting mad are the childless cat ladies. That's what I think. The ones who took offense are the people he's talking about, in my opinion, for the most part. Except for the ones like Jennifer Aniston, who hasn't actually bothered to read or the context of his comments or to watch the speech. But I think for the most part, the childless cat ladies who have no sense of humor, they're the ones who can't laugh this off. I mean, I'm like I said at the beginning, I don't have kids. And when I heard him say that, I knew what he meant. I didn't take offense and go, how dare he? How dare he say that about me? Thank you so much for the super chat. Also to Gary Thomas for $10. Thanks, Gary. He says, literally a month ago, progressive journalists wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about the left's troubling view of having kids and human procreation, how it should be a bipartisan issue. Wow. Well, just a month ago that they wrote that. Well, that's the thing about a lot of these journalists, these publications, the politicians. They contradict themselves all the time. They're going to swing in this direction now. Why? Because it gives them political capital to attack JD Vance and to try and convince all the women in America that he hates women and that he doesn't like childless women and, he doesn't think they should be able to run for office. And none of those things are true. Skillet for $5. Thank you, Skillet. Says, death cult opposes bringing new life into the world. Definitely checks out. Yeah, it does. If you look at the policies of the left, of my old party, the Democrats, at some point, the Democrats stop being liberal. They're very illiberal now. And they're also very, in my opinion, very anti-family now. If you look at the stuff that they support, I mean, abortion on demand is one of them. Another is sterilizing and mutilating kids. They're fully on board with that. We've seen this outlawed now in several progressive countries. The ones that have actually taken the time to do a systematic medical review of the evidence, those have banned this practice for kids, this gender transitioning for kids. Countries like Finland, Denmark, Norway, the UK, Sweden. We haven't banned it here yet. And this weird time period that we're in until we get to the place where we do ban it, and I think we will, because it is child abuse, because it's mutilating kids. This weird period of time that we're in until we get there, until we ban it, you're watching what the Democrats are doing, and they're on board with it. I could never vote for my old party again while they support that. I could never do that. They are a death cult, in my opinion, at the moment. They've become a death cult. Look what they're doing in Canada. They're doing MAID, assisted suicide. Skillet for $5 says, to whomever gifted me the membership, thank you. Thank you guys for gifting memberships. I didn't see Super Based here yet, but Super Based usually shows up towards the end and gives that a few. So it might have come from Super Based. Okay. I wanted to end with this one's kind of going to be a short one today because I just mostly wanted to cover the JD Vance comments. But let me end with this. There's a big debate going on now among commentators online about whether or not it's helpful to make these jokes about childless cat ladies and stuff like this. And I see points on both sides of this debate. This is Matt Walsh. He says, half of my feed is just conservative accounts insisting that we stop saying completely true things about Kamala Harris because it might make the female voters upset. I see his point. You shouldn't censor truth just to try and, what are you trying to do? A bait and switch, like trick people, trick women? Is that it? Let's just stay quiet about these true things so we can trick women into voting for us. I don't think that's a good strategy. At the same time, I see the points of some of the people who are arguing with him. Here's one of them, Caroline. She says, it's probably because some of us have feeds full of blowjob and coconut jokes when there are actually legitimate things to discuss that should not make people upset. And then she quoted Lauren Southern here, who I thought had a great point. Let me just read this to you because it's giving me a lot to think about. Maybe it'll give you a lot to think about. Lauren Southern said, Kamala is a radical who supported bail funds for violent Black Lives Matter protesters and supported the Green New Deal. She believes in abolishing ICE and decriminalizing illegal border crossings. Yet 99% of my timeline is about Kamala giving blowjobs or something, which is increasingly convincing normal people that the only opposition to her is because she's a woman, rather than any of the legitimate reasons to oppose a Harris presidency. It's Christmas for Democrat strategists who not only shut up the media about the Trump assassination attempt with this switcheroo, but now they're getting the gender war narrative solidified that they've been banking on for years. Hillary's bad history was too obvious, so calling it sexism didn't work. Now no one knows that much about Kamala, and we've got a whole new swath of Gen Z voters. If you don't go out of your way to find Kamala's record, you won't find it. Just coconut and blowjob memes. After the attempted assassination of Trump, I was pretty confident that he had the election in the bag, but y'all may just turn it around for the Democrats. Then we'll see a bunch of crying about how this is why women shouldn't vote. Okay, great. Go join the people in the corner who want to abolish the police to discuss your LARP politics together. Oh, well. She's got some great points here. And like I said, I can see Matt Walsh's point and I can see hers. I certainly think there's room for all kinds of commentary and all kinds of memes. I love humor. There's a place for humor. Humor is one kind of tool. Doing a serious analysis of Kamala's voting record is another thing. It's another kind of tool, and presenting it in a succinct format for people to easily understand. Both of these things are important. But I think what Lauren is saying that I agree with, that I hope Matt Walsh can hear, is sure, you can still do your blowjob memes, and it's true. She did sleep her way to the top. She did. But if that's all we're gonna do in media, like, culture is really important. Memes are very important. Memes are very important. Think back to the 2016 election. Now, I was in the woke world then. And I was one of those people devastated when Trump won. And after he won, I tried to figure out why he won. This is kind of what led me on the journey to leaving woke. And one of the things I discovered as I started looking back through conservative media, reading articles about the memes, about the influencers at the time, about the humor and just like the movement behind him, I started to understand there was a big sense of humor, and that a lot of people online were changing culture. Meme makers change culture. This is true. They do. They have a role to play. And so I think what Lauren is saying is, like, we need the culture makers. We need the meme makers to also take on the real issues. Like the real reasons not to vote for her. If you're just going to make it about her sleeping her way to the top, if we're just going to make it about bad morals, well, Trump seems to have some bad morals. So it's not, it's a tie. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, in the end, I think she's worse if we're just going based on morals, but why would we make that the battleground when we can go at her on the issues? She was raising money. She was online raising money during the Summer of Love when BLM was burning down businesses and killing people and rioting and throwing Molotov cocktails. She was asking the people to raise funds to bail these degenerates out of prison, the ones who were arrested. And most of them weren't arrested, but the ones who did get arrested, she was raising money to get them out of jail. That's disgusting. There are very serious things that we can look at and that we can, and I hope the meme makers will make memes about. I also see Matt Walsh's point, which is like, this is funny. We should be able to joke about it. Sure. But let's not, I hope we don't stay at this place where that's like all the memes. Let's move into some of her bad policy positions. Let's talk about, I want to do a show on Monday about Kamala Harris and equity. She's a communist. She's a Marxist. It's all out there in the open. We should be talking about that. She's pushing equity. She keeps saying we have to end up in the same place. We all have to end up in the same place. No, we don't. That's communism. That's terrifying. That's terrifying. And it requires discrimination to do that. It requires oppression to do that for everybody to end up in the same place. There are really, really important things that the meme makers, the culture makers, the people who do commentary, that they need to be highlighting. And I hope that starts to happen I think for a lot of us, we're just starting to go through her record and we're starting to see like, what are the most alarming things? And I hope that happens. The blowjob jokes, you can still do them. Let's just not make it the only thing. Jardum for £2. Thank you, Jardum says, how do you think she will fare in a debate with Trump? Oh man. I think when he did his debate with Biden, he was very reserved and people talked about how restrained he was. And I think it was because it's hard to, go all in on an elderly man who has obvious cognitive problems, who's not there, who has dementia or whatever it is Biden has. So I don't know if that's just that there's a new Trump and he's more restrained, or if it was because specifically it was Biden. I think it might just be because it was Biden and Biden it was obviously suffering. So if he's still the same old Trump, I expect him to be very funny and to make a lot of barbs and to put her in her place. I think that she, though, is going to, here's what she's going to rely on. This is why it's so important that we go on the offense and we make it about her record, because Kamala Harris is completely going to campaign on being a woman and being a person of color, and that's it. She's campaigning on identity politics, and that is it. Her whole message is going to be vote for me because I'm a woman and a person of color. That's it. She's plugging into an existing ideology, woke ideology, which says everything is about what race or sex or sexuality you are. She's plugging into my old ideology, and that's what she's running on, because that's easy to activate all those people. All you do is tell them, hey, here I am. Do the work. Vote for me. Vote for me. Do the work of your ideology. That's it. And so if all we do is talk about the fact that she slept her way to the top, if all we do is focus on those kind of things, like we're just playing defense. I kind of think we need to make it about her record. In the debate, she's going to tell anecdotes about being discriminated against. What was that one that Tulsi called her in this lie? We have to go back and watch that. We have to get prepared for the debates. She's going to try and tell these stories that tug at the heartstrings I don't know. I think it's going to be entertaining. That's for sure. She's going to try and make Trump out to be a sexist and a racist and all the same things that Hillary tried to do. But I think possibly, at least on the left, she's not as unlikable as Hillary. So that's a little concerning. You know, in 2016, I told you guys I was in the woke cult still. I had just started leaving. I didn't even realize what was happening to me yet. I didn't even realize I was leaving. I just started questioning things. But I was still in the cult. I could not vote for Hillary. Something stopped me. I kept flip-flopping. I was like, okay, I'm either going to vote for Jill Stein or Hillary. And I kept going back and forth because the messaging in my cult kept telling me that if I voted for Jill Stein, I was throwing my vote away. And the most important thing was that I had to stop this demagogue of Trump. I had to stop this evil guy. That's the same thing. They're running that same playbook now. You have to vote for this woman to stop Trump. The problem was Hillary was so unlikable that there was something, even though I was still in that woke world, there was something in my gut that did not like her. I couldn't even identify it. I couldn't articulate it. But I kept swinging back to Jill Stein because I was like, I don't know if I can vote for Clinton. And unfortunately, I don't think that there's that same visceral negative reaction to Kamala Harris on the left in that world that there was for Hillary. So that's a little concerning. Daniel, I'll be lurking, listening while I work on other things, as is the usual for me, but I got to say, this is one of my favorite live shows. Thank you so much, Daniel, if you're still listening. And then Pirate Tomsky, thank you for dropping links. This is a link where if you want to support Deprogrammed, there's a whole bunch of places to do that there. Nick Levi 86 has a great comment. As Tim Pool said once, they don't need their own kids, they have yours. That's very true about the left. Jennifer Atkins, crassness is better than evil. Oh yeah, I'll take Trump's crassness over Kamala's evil, over her Marxism and communism any day. You know how I said they're going to make this all about identity? One of the weirdest things that's happening right now that I've seen online is there are all of these racially segregated by race and segregated by gender groups popping up to support Kamala. And there is a white woman for Kamala group that just had a big Zoom call to organize to, you know, get white women to get out and vote for Kamala. And there were over 100,000 white women on that call. And I saw my friend Josh Slocum from Disaffected said, you know, welcome to hell. 100,000 woke white ladies on a call. It's a pretty good comment. Welcome to hell. But what's concerning about, there's something very serious happening there. They started this, the white women for Kamala, they started this after they saw the news article said other successful groups had already formed. Black women for Kamala, black men for Kamala. There's a white men for Kamala group now. And this is what's crazy about this. This is woke ideology in front of your eyes. We're in 2024. Why is your party segregating people to show their support for you? It's just naturally happening. They are segregating themselves according to race and sex. Why are they doing this? They're collectivists. They're not individualists. They're collectivists. They're just like white supremacists. They believe that this is very important. They think it's very important that white women meet separately and segregated to talk about how they, as white women, are going to get more white women to vote for Kamala because they think being white and being a woman is the most important thing about you. That your identity groups are the most important thing about you. They're collectivists. They think all white women also think alike. For them, it's very natural. If you're going to make a group, make it about race and sex. They think black men need to be segregated into their own group because being black and a man is the most important thing about you. And black women for Kamala need to be separated, and white men for Kamala need to be separated into their own group. They are organizing around race and sex right out in the open. This is who they are. This is what's wrong with them. This is what's disgusting. It's going to this whole election is going to be identity politics. If the left has their way, that's what she's going to run on. I'm a black woman, vote for me. That's what she's going to run on. I think this is where memes can be very effective at changing the culture, because mockery can be a useful tool. It can also illustrate truth. I saw a great meme. I think this is how you do it right. This gets people thinking. It's funny and it gets people thinking. Here, let me show you this one. Now, people are correctly calling her a DEI hire. She was a DEI hire. There's even a tweet from Biden saying he selected her. Well, before he even selected her, he said he was going to select a black woman. He told you off the top, he's selecting based on race and sex. That's how he's choosing, not based on merit. Race and sex are most important. Merit might be number 3, right? It's probably not even number 3. He said he's going to choose based on race and sex, and he did. And then after he chose her and announced her, he said again, that's important to practice diversity, inclusion, and equity. And he's doing so in his choice of VP. They're on the record. She's a DEI hire. That is what she is. She was selected for her race and her sex. But when you call it what it is, you say the truth. Okay, she was hired because of her race and sex. She's a DEI hire. They screech and they say, no, how dare you? That's racist. Don't say that. She's not a DEI hire. What's happening there? This meme is great. This meme explains what's happening there. If DEI is a good thing, then why do they get upset when you call someone a DEI hire? This is a great meme. It's funny. It has the potential to make people who are casually on the left think about this for a second and question it. It illuminates truth, because the truth is they know that DEI means that you're selecting people based on something other than merit. They know this. They know it's not a good thing. That's why they react so harshly when you say, congratulations on your DEI hire. How dare you say it's a DEI hire? Because they know it's a bad thing. This is a great meme. I don't know who made that, by the way. I just saw it on Facebook and I loved it. They treat DEI like a lot of things that are evil that they push. DEI is evil. It is discrimination on the basis of race and sex. It's evil. They're supposed to, they say they're against racism and sexism, but they push racism and sexism in policy. They want to enshrine racism and sexism in law. That's evil. Transing kids, mutilating and sterilizing kids is evil, and they push it. A lot of these evil things that they push, and what do they say when they push it? They say they care about these kids. They care about trans kids. They frame it as they're the good guys while they're chopping off kids' genitals and breasts and sterilizing them for life. And the way that their tactic on these things, the way that they push these things is pretty similar on a lot of the evil things they push. They will say it's not happening. They say it's not happening. Child transitions are not happening. DEI hiring is not happening. How dare you say she's a DEI hire? That doesn't happen. They'll say it's not happening. The very things they push. And then when you show them an example of, well, here it did happen. Look at this child. Look at Chloe Cole, who had her breast removed at 15. Irreversible damage to Chloe Cole, to this child. Look at Layla Jane. There's a whole list of these kids who are now suing the butchers that did that to them. When you show them, look, hey, it did happen. And DEI hiring happened. Here's Biden admitting she was a DEI pick. When you show them that's happening, then they say, well, if it is happening, it's a good thing. It's not happening, but if it is, it's a good thing. These are liars. They behave like psychopaths, narcissists, and sociopaths. They lie, they lie, they lie. They will use any tactic they can to win in the moment. They're not intellectually consistent. They're hypocrites by nature. They contradict themselves by nature. They have to, because they use words as tools to win in the moment. They use them to bludgeon people. They don't use words to more effectively understand one another as tools for understanding. They use words as tools for power. And they will say one thing today and a different thing tomorrow. Beard, thank you for the super chat for $5. Beard says, if I was a woman and cared about a woman being president, I'd be insulted that this was my choice. I don't like Tulsi, but I could stand voting for her. Yeah, absolutely. It's so insulting, condescending, and sexist that the left is pushing this, you're a woman, you have to vote for a woman. And also this idea that, as a woman, this is supposed to mean something to me, that she's, oh my goodness, this is a moment for women. No, it's not. How insulting. You would only believe that if you're in the woke cult and you think sex and race and all these identity group statuses that this is the most important thing in life, and it's the lens through which you're supposed to judge people. They do believe that. They think you're supposed to judge people based on race and sex, not as individuals, not like Martin Luther King dreamed of, not judging people on the content of their character and their behavior and their actions and their words and their ideas. No, judging them on what race they are and what sex they are. That's what the left does. They're just like white supremacists in that way. And so to them, yeah, that it is the most important. They do think, oh, this is great for women. Why? Also, isn't it funny that they suddenly know what a woman is? It's completely condescending, Beard. By the way, I did vote for Tulsi in 2020 in the primaries. I did vote Democrat once more. So 2018 was the first time I ever voted Republican. And that was in the midterms. I voted for Ted Cruz. First Republican I ever voted for. He was the most liberal option because he was running against Beto, who is very illiberal and wants to take away our Second Amendment rights and doesn't believe in private property or securing the border, or he's not a liberal. So I voted for Ted Cruz, and then in 2020, I voted for Tulsi in the Democratic primaries. I really like her. We're going to show, like I said, on Monday, I want to get more into, I think leading up to the election, I'm just going to try and do some short streams where we take one specific issue and just debunk it. And I definitely want to get back to that, the debate footage between Tulsi and Kamala. We'll address that at some point. I'm going to wrap it up for today, though. Thank you guys. Oh wait, one more. Beard for $5. It's like being pro Lizzo and then being mad when I say, you look like Lizzo. Beard, thank you for the super chat. You won't believe this. Yesterday, when I was staining the deck, I'm up there for a few hours in the sun, and my mind's just wandering. And I thought of this same analogy. I was like, it's like those women who say, it's like those women who say, Lizzo is beautiful and sexy. And then you say, oh, well, you remind me of Lizzo. And they get mad because they don't really believe it. That's like the DEI people, like, DEI is good and it's a great thing. You're like, oh, cool. I'm glad that you got selected through DEI. And you're like, how dare you? like DEI is wonderful. And it's like, congratulations on being a DEI hire. And they're like, how dare you say that to me? Because really, they don't believe what they're saying. When they say Lizzo is beautiful, that obesity is beautiful, they don't believe that. They say things they don't mean all the time. And then you can tell how they really feel emotionally. It comes out if you take them at their word. Okay, guys. How funny, Beard, that you had that same analogy. That means it's a good one. We both thought of it. That means it's a good one. We should run with it. Okay, guys. I'm going to run. I hope you have a great weekend. Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, that Christian panel will be back at 6:00 on Wednesday, and we're discussing the movie Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot. It's an Angel Studios film. It's currently in theaters. If you want to go see it, I've heard good things about it. I still haven't seen it yet. If you want to go see it so that we don't spoil it for you, it might be a good reason to do a date night or to do a date night with your cats for all the cat ladies in the chat. I'm just kidding. Take care, guys, and I'll see you on Monday, and we'll be talking about Kamala on Monday. That's what we're doing. Okay. Take care.
Welcome to Costco. I love you. Welcome to Costco. I love you. Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Oh no, I'm still here. Hold on. I was looking at these different clips. Where's the jerk one? Oh, this one. I'm gonna go then.
Oh, I'm gonna go then. And I don't